boarders live in. A lot of my colleagues are married, some of them are happy. The others have children. I'm single, if you're really interested in that sort of detail. Great sense of humour, and I live in a castle in central London with parking. And I'm on Facebook, ladies. It's free parking. Oh yeah. So there we go. Right, hope that answers your question. You're now standing on a killing ground. Sadly, it's no longer operational. As an attacking army, you'd have lost dozens, probably hundreds of men trying to get through that festering bog of a moat and wrestling with the polar bears. Trying to climb the walls. All the time you're doing that, there are people trying to kill you. Is it likely you would have got this far? No. But if you did, unlucky. Now you won't have noticed this yet, especially if you're blonde, but behind you there is another wall. The inner defensive wall dates from the 1220s, has 13 defensive towers and a 50-foot curtain. Soldiers on the ramparts and the fighting tops would now be hurling vicious verbal abuse at you. Not to mention stones, arrows, buckets of boiling tar, cows, sheep, salad, unwanted children, everything would have been thrown at you. Of Henry VIII, the Tudors. I don't like talking about the Tudors. It's boring and dull, but I have to, so I'll talk about that later when I show you where those two were killed and where they lie to this day. Mel Gibson should have been brought through these gates and a really hefty slap. Ever since the fabulously inaccurate comedy Braveheart, not a day goes by without some demented Scot demanding to know, where did you keep William Wallace? He was my father. Chicken my blue face. That's just the women. And men are much more vocal. It is true that in the winter of 1299, Sir William Wallace did pass through these gates, but you have already spent longer here than Sir William Wallace ever did. William Wallace was knighted by the Scottish court. The English are a bunch of snobs and didn't recognise the title. They classed him as a commoner. Commoners found guilty of treason weren't held here. This was for the nobility. William Wallace was immediately taken to Smithfield Market, where he was hanged by the neck until quite uncomfortable. They only half hanged him. They let him down, took the noose from around his neck and revived him. When he came round, he saw a knife. Alarmingly, that was going into his chest, and it was pulled down in a line, nipples to navel. He was opened up. But it wasn't a fatal wound and wasn't meant to be. Sir William Wallace was entirely conscious when his executioner's filthy hands plunged inside, disemboweled him. 36 feet of his intestines spilled out onto the pavement with a gush of blood which steamed in the cold winter air. These entrails were then placed on a hot griddle where they sizzled. And at this point, Mel Gibson would have you believe a man can shout, freedom! Which I don't think's likely. Right? His heart was being ripped out. Come on, that's got to be a distraction. The heart was thrown into a brazier to burn, and that probably killed him. The head was taken off. That was left on London Bridge. The body hacked into 4 pieces, and these quarters were then sent north to the border towns between England and Scotland and left on their gates as a warning to the barbaric, troublesome Scots not to upset the clearly civilised, peace-loving and harmonious English. So Sir William Wallace, a truly great man, was hanged, drawn and quartered. Yeah. This is Tower Green and it's colour-coded. It's the grass. I have to explain that because a lot of people spend an hour or so looking for a green tower. We don't have one. These people are European. Europeans are nice enough people, I guess, but they do have syntax problems and talk like Yoda. So, Tower Green, right? Grass it is. That was Yoda, wasn't it?
Yes.
You mean Fuzzy Bear? Who said that? Gutless. The same bloke does them both. When her head was lifted from the straw, there were gasps of amazement and horror from the assembled audience. Pathetic. It's more of an ah. It's better. So swift had been the execution that when the head came up, they were horrified to notice that her eyes continued to gaze around the crowd. And for quite some time, while her neck dripped blood, her lips continued to move. But isn't that just like a woman? Last word, last word, last word. Last word. It was here that Henry VIII had 2 of his wives beheaded. Many husbands bring their wives to admire the spot. Now the first of these was Queen Anne Boleyn. Henry VIII divorced Catherine of Aragon because she couldn't give him a son. She'd given him a daughter, but it wasn't good enough. It really is. Yeah. So he married Anne Boleyn, who, like Catherine, gave him a daughter, but she couldn't give him a son. She tried hard, though, really hard, and not just with Henry. I don't care what your sentimental or romantic attachment is to Queen Anne Boleyn. I don't care if you religiously watched every episode of The Tudors and know the script backwards. I don't care if you own the DVD box set, and I don't want to know if you were Anne Boleyn in a previous life. On average, I meet 3 of you a year. You're deluded, barking mad. You should have hospital treatment. Seek it. Anne Boleyn was found guilty of adultery with 7 men, including her brother. When you're married to the king, that's treason, and I don't care who you're married to, it is a bit excessive, but not a little weird. Ladies, gentlemen, it's all a bit sad, isn't it? Should we end on a happy note?
Yes.
Would you like some romance?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I don't do romance terribly well, but I'll give it a go. Lord Nithsdale was a Scottish lord, a Jacobite, and he took part in the Jacobite rebellion of 1715. He was captured at the Battle of Preston. He was held a prisoner here under sentence of death, and on the eve of his execution, his wife, the Lady Nithsdale, was allowed to visit, and she took 2 of her lady friends with her and an awful lot of wine. Gonna be a good last night. The wine was given to the yeoman warder on guard. These women kept coming and going, sometimes together, sometimes alone. But every time they passed the warder, they made sure he was drinking. Not difficult. He got confused. In fact, he was confused as a newt. Sometime during that night, Lord Nithsdale, a giant of a man, his portrait tells us so, with a big red beard, walked right past that yeoman warder, disguised as a woman, in spare clothing that these ladies had secreted under their skirts. Cheap, low, female trick. Here's where the romance comes in. Lady Nithsdale stayed in the chamber, talking and weeping with an imaginary husband. If she'd have been caught, she'd have been for the chalk. Ask yourselves, lads, would your wife do that for you? Not a chance. When she was sure they were all safe outside, she left the chamber. She asked the warder to lock the door, leave her husband to make his peace with God, which he promptly did. They fled, went to Rome, and 30 years later, Lord Nithsdale dies of old age. And just 2 days after him, the much younger Lady Nithsdale dies, they say, of a broken heart. But together in death as they were in life, I think that's actually quite a beautiful story. Thank you very much.
Habe ich